Alright everybody, we've got an exciting bike review today just for you guys. We're going to take a look at the Salsa Cutthroat. It's Salsa's all-carbon bike-packing endurance gravel crushing machine. Find out what we think about it so far in this video. Welcome back Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're looking for information and inspiration all about bike touring, bike packing, and bike fishing, then definitely subscribe. This channel is for you. So last week we got a hold of two Cutthroats to review, the orange Apex build and the blue Rival build, and they have been a blast to ride. And over the last couple days we've taken them on a couple of rides on some gravel roads and a lot of single track here in Missoula. So this video isn't going to be a full-on review. It's going to be a little bit more of a first impressions, but I'm definitely going to do a full review on the bike after we've actually taken it out on some bike packing trips. But for now, I'm going to talk about how it rides in general without a load. First off, if you're not familiar with the Cutthroat, it is the carbon fiber version of the Salsa Fargo. So it's really created for events like riding the Tour Divide. I know some people use it for DK200. And it's basically the bike you want with you on rough gravel roads, on single track where you need to carry all the things but don't want to be bogged down by frame weight. So right off the bat, you see some unique design features that are keyed into that kind of use. First off, they really didn't compromise in terms of giving you carrying capacity inside the main triangle of the frame. And there is a generous amount of space in here compared to comparable sized trail bikes. You'll also notice that there is a ton of braze-ons. You can fit up to 3 water bottle cages inside the frame itself, 2 on the fork, and there are also 2 bolts on the top tube so you can directly mount a top tube bag, getting rid of the straps and all the wiggle that comes with a Velcro system. So if you want to go light and fast but also need carrying capacity, this is the bike for you. And if you want to use a rear rack with a bike, you can. There are some drillings in the back so you can mount a rear rack. The bike also ships with tubeless ready wheels, which is a nice touch. Because running tubeless will give you a little bit more suspension since it is fully rigid. One interesting to note is that it is set up 1x. On the front you've got a 38 tooth chainring, and on the back it is a 11 to 42 tooth rear cassette in 11 speeds. It also uses a clutch rear derailleur, so that means it's got a super strong chain tension preventing chain slap, which is nice on a carbon frame. The front chainring is a narrow wide design, so better holds on to the chain itself, so you'll notice there is no chain catcher up front. For us, this is a bit of a departure. It's our first 1x bike, so it's taken some getting used to. There are lots of things I like about it, but some things I also find lacking. I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about the pros and cons. So when I first hopped on the bike, one thing that became really obvious is that this is indeed a drop bar mountain bike and not a monster cross road bike. It seems like splitting hairs, but there is a really distinct feeling in the ride quality when you ride this bike and compare it to, say, something like the Warbird. While it looks similar to the Warbird, the ride feel, the ride quality, the ride characteristics is completely different. So aside from the ability to take bigger tires that offer more suspension and better grip, the frame itself is a lot longer. The wheelbase is longer, the rear chainstays are longer, and how this translates on the road or on the trail is that it is a super stable and comfortable ride. Descending down a gravel road, it feels like you are riding on rails. So this is a bike that's definitely designed for those long endurance events where you're putting in long hours day after day. It's just such a cushy, comfortable ride. Taking it on some single track, the frame geometry and the longer wheelbase really adds to the stability on rocky descents. The bike really holds its line and it doesn't deflect when you hit baby heads or going around the corner like it would on the Salsa Warbird. We actually rode the same stretch of single track with both the Warbird and the Cutthroat, and the ride feel was completely night and day. On the Warbird it was doable and fun, but you definitely felt like you were under biking. But with the Cutthroat it just felt like it was at home on the trail. That said, it's definitely not designed for doing extreme downhill runs, but for rolling cross-country terrain, some technical features, I feel like the Cutthroat does an awesome job. Other things about the geometry that I noticed is that the front end is really tall. Although it has drop bars, it feels as if it wants you to really optimize that in the drops position for descending. So what that means is raising the handlebars up a bit so that the drops is your primary position. And the handlebars that ship with the Cutthroat really make this easy because although it does have a drop, it's really shallow and it flares out, gets really wide in the hooks for that added stability when you're going on rough terrain. I found myself initially setting up the drops like I would on the Warbird with the hoods as a primary position, but after taking it off-road I actually raised the handlebars up so that the hooks would be my primary position, and it's handled much better since then. In terms of sizing the bike, it gets really interesting. I usually ride small-sized mountain bikes, so I thought I would feel better on the small Cutthroat, but the medium works pretty well, and I get the added benefit of that larger interior triangle. So that's it for the general impressions. I'm going to now talk about the things I like and dislike about the Cutthroat. Keep in mind that these are my initial impressions, and I'm going to do a longer, more fleshed out review after we've had a chance to ride the bikes loaded. So the first big like is this bike is super versatile. You can run it as a pure racing gravel machine without any load, but you also have the options if you want to go bikepacking with it to mount any number of bags in the frame and in the front fork and in the back. Another big like is the frame and how light the bike is. For a bike that can take such large tires and go on such rough terrain, it's nice to have something that's really lightweight so it doesn't bog you down in the climb. Another huge like is the handling. The bike is just super stable on rough terrain. It soaks up all the bumps on gravel roads. On gravel descents, it really feels like you're riding on rails. It really soaks up all those micro vibrations and makes it an all-day riding bike. And perhaps a even bigger surprise is when we took it on single track, it handled really, really well. I know it seems weird to take a drop bar bike on single track, but if you set it up correctly, the Cutthroat can definitely handle single track trails. And lastly, the bike is really capable of handling all sorts of terrain depending on the tires and wheel sets that you put on it. You can run burlier, knobbier tires if you're gonna ride a lot of single track, or something with a lighter tread if you're gonna tackle mostly gravel roads and dry conditions. So that summarizes all the likes so far. There are a couple of dislikes that I had questions about when riding the Cutthroat. So the first big one is the gearing. It ships with a 38 tooth front chainring, and when paired with the 1142 tooth cassette, you do get a pretty good range. I think if you're purely going to ride it naked with no bags, then it's probably pretty good as long as you're not going up extended 15-20% grade climbs. But if you do find yourself in the mountains a lot and with a load, you're probably going to want to consider changing the front chainring to something smaller. I'm already eyeing a 34 or 36 tooth chainring just to drop the lower end a little bit more, so when we do take it with a load, I'm not going to be pushing the bike as much. Another thing to be aware of, I wouldn't quite call it a dislike, is that because the frame is designed as such to kind of really capitalize on the internal space for a frame bag, I find that the standover height is a little bit compromised. So going down some technical single track where you might have to put a foot down, you've got to be really cautious of where you land on your feet, so to speak. And the last thing to be aware of is the geometry. This isn't so much a dislike as it is kind of understanding what this bike is intended for and what it was designed. It looks like it should be a monster cross road bike, but it is not a road bike. When you get on it and pedal, it definitely has more of a mountain bike feel. And what I mean by that is that it does have really long chain stays. So it's not going to have that quick acceleration as you would on a road bike or even something like the Salsa Warbird. So if you expect it to have that same kind of really tight and short rear end just because it has drop bars in the front, then you're going to be kind of disappointed. You kind of have to accept the bike for what it is, and that it's a drop bar mountain bike. They really nailed it with that phrase because it feels like a mountain bike but just happens to have drop bars. So really that's it for the dislikes so far. Again, we've only had the bikes the last couple days, and these are really my first impressions, but I do feel like first impressions really tell you a lot about how you're going to feel about the bike in the long term. Again, subscribe if you want to be notified down the road of the actual full-blown review. So what do you guys think? Are there any other Salsa Cutthroat owners out there? Do you guys agree with my review or not? Are there any of you out there that are on the fence about the Cutthroat or the Warbird? Definitely send me questions. I can hopefully help steer you one way or the other. If you guys have specific questions, again, leave those in the comments. I hope you guys found this review helpful. So if you liked this video or found it helpful, you know what to do. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.